Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of Summit. Thank you so much for joining us today. And first up, we have a speaker, Tanya Gordon, who has over 10 years of experience working with software development. She also co-leads the Tel Aviv Atlassian user group. She manages and extends both Jira and Confluence for an R&D department of over 2,000 people at HP. She's flown about 15,000 miles to be here today and tell you about her expertise. And please join me in welcoming Tanya to the stage.
The presentation is not showing. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited. Okay, so let me start with a short story. Once upon a time, actually, about 2.5 years ago, I started working at HP's Indigo division based in Israel. I was a DevOps engineer who was seeking a new challenge. Sick of builds and continuous integration, sorry, DevOps guys. Well, my new manager, Gal Fatal, who's here, also giving a talk, has just finished describing that HP intended to use Atlassian tools to revolutionize the whole development process, and that I have arrived just in time, right at the beginning of the action. Now, having slightly different experience, I thought to myself that this indeed sounds like a great challenge, and this picture popped into my head. For those of you who watched How I Met Your Mother, this guy will look familiar. Anyway, my first project was to lead the Jira and Confluence implementation in the company, and I was super excited. My head went like this. We were new to Jira, and we wanted it all. So a year later, we went live with our brand new and very much customized Jira. We held training sessions, recorded videos, held open office hours, and even launched our own service desk to be able to better support and help our users. And then one morning, the whole R&D department got an email proclaiming that Jira is our main tool for managing the development process. We have created a fully functional, large-scale machine that can almost launch rockets into the space, brew your morning coffee, and, well, let's not forget, help the R&D department better plan their development process. After users started working, we gradually discovered bits of code and different customizations that were excessive and caused performance problems. Multiple apps that were purchased but never used, and many more firebacks. This is how I got inspired for this talk. I want to tell you all about our journey and give you my tips on how to achieve a balanced Jira customization. Now, to get us started, let me ask you a couple of questions. First, please raise your hand if you have a plain vanilla Jira with no customizations or apps installed at all. Nice, I see one. Don't be shy. You can tell me. Okay, well, that's expected. Now, please raise your hand if your Jira has enough customizations to launch rockets into the space. Okay, I see a couple. Okay, nice, nice. Okay, so I guess the rest of you are somewhere in between. Now, with a final show of hand, let me know who has several apps, maybe wrote a couple of scripts, and have several integrations. Yeah, okay, great. So this is expected. You're in the right place. I'm going to give you all my tips on how to navigate your Jira into a balanced and sane situation. Let's begin. We're going to discuss all Jira customizations, options, and possibilities, starting with what I call the out-of-the-box customizations. This includes creating various custom fields, adding and changing workflows, including conditions, validators, and post functions, going forward to creating new issue types, field context, and more. All of those are available out of the box without the need to install a single app or writing a single line of code. Now, this already makes Jira very powerful, but also potentially dangerous and destructive if not managed wisely, right? Going forward, I'm going to discuss different customization possibilities when you install apps from the marketplace. Now, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of apps in the marketplace covering a wide variety of needs and scenarios. This is the next step of customizations. It presents various challenges to the Jira admin. We're going to discuss them all later in the presentation. And last but not least is the in-house development, starting with script runner or alike apps that enables you to write custom fields, listeners, and more, and going forward to full-scale app development that is specific for your organization needs. I'm a great believer in examples and learning from one's experience, so let's dive in. Let's start with a Jira admin team. It might be a one-man job, a busy DevOps team, or a designated team that is responsible for all Atlassian tools in the organization. It might also be that no one is responsible, and Jira is just there, floating in the air, going from one team's hands to another's. All options are okay, depending on organization type and company culture. I would recommend to adjust the team members in a way that contributes to your organization. Meaning, if your company is looking for a big-time customized solution, then the team members should have some development background. However, if your Jira is more straightforward and out of the box, then it's better to invest in a more service-oriented team. In addition, encourage your team members to take Atlassian certification exams to deepen their knowledge and understanding of the tools. In any case, you should pay attention to the number of admins you have in your system. I think we're all familiar with this situation. A project admin approaches you and asks just for a small adjustment of the workflow. They just want to rename a status or change a custom field or maybe try a new app that just came out. And we might be too busy, or maybe we simply trust them, right? They are project admins after all. It gives us some peace of mind. And we decide to give them permissions. That can end up with hundreds of admins in our systems. And in Jira, this might lead to a catastrophic series of events because a regular user that is not familiar with the system, like a Jira admin, might easily clone schemes, rename statuses, causing filters to break or leave unnecessary apps installed, and so on. So eventually, your Jira will get slow or buggy, and you will be left to navigate your way through another crisis. So I would recommend keep the number of admins low. Keep it under 5. Jira is a very intuitive tool to use. But in order to be able to navigate your way through all administrative tasks without stepping on each other's toes, all admins should work together. Now, this leads me to my next point about delegating some of the administrative tasks to the project admins. And I know it might sound like a contradiction, but it's actually not. Let me give you an example here. In Jira, in order to be able to manage user groups, you must have administrative permissions. Now, it's a little annoying because usually project admins or team leaders are the ones that are familiar with their team members' movements best. And they are the ones who should be responsible to assigning them to the right groups, not you, right? This is where I recommend using project roles instead of groups. You can delegate the task of user management almost completely if you teach your project admins how to allocate users to the relevant roles according to the permission scheme. Now, in some cases, the project admins will have more power if their schemes are not shared, because in that case, they will have the ability to change the workflows and screens. It might not be problematic at first, but having many separated schemes can also come with some administrative costs. So I would say use your judgment for this one, depending on the use case. you want to look for the heart of the requirement. Always try to hear the user out and extract a simpler version of what they're asking. Users are coming to you to request something to fix a problem. They're usually already done the whole thinking process in their heads, and they're coming to you to give them the solution. As the Jira admins, you should try and reverse engineer the thinking process. You really should try to get into their shoes and think like them. And then try to think on possible solutions, because as we said, there are many possibilities. Introduce them to the user, weigh pros and cons, and decide together on the best approach. A good example I once heard by Rachel Wright demonstrates this perfectly. A user approaches you and asks for a group. Okay, you create the group for them, and then they say, my group is broken. What? Like, what do you mean, you ask? What do you mean my group is broken? And then the user says he's been trying to add the group as a watcher. But wait, this is not a Jira feature. So maybe the group was unnecessary to begin with. If you ask more before implementation, you can simply avoid this workload. Now, we're coming to the most important part of the talk. It might sound trivial to some, that's exactly why I emphasize this point so much. You must set and enforce standards. Each Jira is unique and different, and this is the beauty of it. It is your job as the Jira admin to set up a set of rules and guidelines that is specific for your company and works right. Make it simple and generic so it will be applicable for many projects and teams. Atlassian tools have a tendency to grow and spread like a wildfire because the tools are easy and intuitive to use. But in order to be able to keep data integrity and create meaningful reports, standards are absolutely necessary. And yes, sometimes you will deny a request. If it's too specific or contradicts with something else in your system, no is a legitimate answer. For any customization request, you must try your best to determine its impact on the system as a whole, now and in the future. And this is not as easy as it sounds, but it's absolutely necessary. Let's talk about some poor practices examples, and then review some standards examples we enforce at HP. Many times, we're asked to create a new issue type. Usually, users are simply looking for ways to distinguish different kinds of work, and there are many ways to do it in Jira. You can suggest using components, custom fields, labels, and more. But creating a new issue type in the same project should only be done if the user requires a new set of screens or workflows. You should not treat issue type creation lightly. It can spiral out of control, leaving your users searching for the right issue type instead of just doing their work. Another example is when users approaches you and asks for yet another status with some redundant name. For example, in progress, working, work in progress, coding. Those are all basically the same. Remember, don't make customizations just to make one Jira user happy. It's not worth it. You should try and convince them to fall into existing standards as much as possible. Take a look here. There are two on-hold statuses, spelled a little differently, and are assigned to a different category. Like, what's going on, right? This is very confusing. Avoid these situations and keep your Jira healthy. Now, let's review some standards examples we enforce at HP. First is the sprint naming convention. We decided to add dates onto the sprint names in order to ease the scheduling tasks for the users. All users use shared sprints that are managed from one single generic board. This way, we ensure everyone are aligned on the timeline. Next is the centralized version list. In order to be able to create reports, all users must use the same version objects. Misspelled or inaccurate versions can simply compromise data integrity. So in order to achieve this, we use script runners, built-in version synchronizer listeners that simply copies all changes that are done to the version list of a master project to the rest of the slave projects. And last is the Jira forum. This is a weekly meeting during which we discuss ongoing challenges and implementation possibilities. The forum consists of representatives from each major user group, like software engineers, developers, QAs, and PMOs. All members are very enthusiastic. They all love and care very much for the system. This meeting proved to be very effective in the decision-making process for Jira, and I would recommend to hold regular meetings of this kind at your company as well. Now, with all that said, let's assume you have decided to create some customized automatic procedures. For example, you will be creating stories and subtasks when an epic is created in a specific project. This is a relatively common scenario. You would use some custom post function, whether scripted or provided by one of the apps from the marketplace. In addition, you were asked to create some automatic transitions. Let's say when the first subtask transitions to in progress, the connected story and epic should transition to in progress as well. So far, so good, right? Now, there are several edge cases here. For example, what happens if the subtask transitions back to not started? Should the story and epic be affected? What happens if the story gets reassigned? Should the status also change? I don't know. I can think of at least 5 more edge cases from the top of my head. And it's okay to have edge cases. You should probably take a minute and document this so you wouldn't forget. But I would recommend to avoid and try to covering all at once. You should define a prototype, set a proof of concept stage when you pick up a project or team, and check if and how the process works. Then you should gather some feedback from your users and define the next steps. This way, you stay attentive to your users and can make changes effectively and quickly. Also, keep in mind that over-automation can sometimes be risky. The system should work for you and not against you, and your users should not be held captives by the system's limitations. There are no limits, and everything's possible. But really, not everything should be done. Okay, just to make sure you're still everyone here are with me, please raise your hand if you inherited an existing Jira application when you first came to your Jira administrator role at your company. Nice. Okay. Well, I would say like about 80%. That's a lot. I got lucky, because I got to start fresh. As I told you at the beginning, I arrived at HP just before the implementation started, but unfortunately, after the design stage was already completed, but we'll get to it later. In any case, at some point, it just feels too crowded. Too much is going on in the system. Too many issue types, custom fields, redundant workflows, users that are not there already, many apps installed. At some point of time, you will feel the strong itch to do an annual cleanup. Now, Jira will usually not let you delete something that is being used without a proper notification. But there are still several things to keep in mind when cleaning up Jira. For example, deleting or renaming existing entities like fields, projects, filters can break other filters and dashboards and boards that are based on them, right? There are several tools to help you with this task. For example, Cleaner for Jira app and custom fields optimizer tool for data center. Those tools will help you identify areas that need cleaning up. But knowing your data and how it is being used is essential in order to make the right decisions here. Deleting a custom field context displays no warning, no "are you sure" message, nothing from stopping you from making an honest mistake, really. If you have a select list or a checkbox types, the data instantly deletes. And it does not fall back onto the default context as one might expect, me. Now, this was actually fixed in Jira 7.11 version. Another reason to upgrade and not to stay behind on older versions. Remember that upgrade procedures usually end up with updated issues. So if you have filters or external integrations that are based on the updated field of an issue, it might have additional impact. Okay, talking about cleanup procedures without mentioning the project archive option would not be complete. Picture an overflowing closet, full of clothes. The more clutter, the harder it becomes to find the things you're looking for. And eventually, with all that, you declare that you still have nothing to wear. It's the story of my life, and I guess many of you will relate. Same is with Jira. It's really easy to create new issues and projects, but it's not that easy to remove them when they're no longer relevant. So let's get things sorted out. There is a built-in option for archiving a project in Jira Data Center. This will remove the project and its issues completely from the index. It will improve performance and reduce clutter. And also, you can easily unarchive the project if it gets needed again. This archive project option was first introduced in Jira Data Center 7.10 version. Prior versions, and also Jira Server and Cloud, don't have this option, at least not yet. But there are two workarounds, the online and the offline archiving. The online archiving includes changing the permission scheme to hide or make the project read-only. This will not improve performance because the issues are still in the index, but help with the clutter. The offline archiving includes backing up your project and deleting it from your system. I know it sounds a little scary, but this will improve performance. But remember that restoring is a little difficult. You should only use this option if you're sure that this project will not be needed again in a live Jira instance. Okay, let's talk about reporting. Reporting is an integrated part of the day-to-day activities in Jira. And as administrators, we are often asked to help our users to create the best possible views for their team's needs. In general, there are three ways to report data in Jira. First, the JQL filters and a huge variety of dashboard gadgets that help you visualize your team's data in a fun and expressive way. Second are the Jira board reports that you can use to show information about your projects, versions, epics, sprints, and issues. In these reports, there are almost no room for customizations except for a little filtering. And last are the external apps and reporting systems that create a full BI solution for your Jira environment. You would consider purchasing those solutions if the out-of-the-box options are not sufficient, or if you need to create a specific report, or if you need a business KPI. In order to be able to consolidate data into meaningful reports and KPIs, you must use the same generic fields. This means you cannot allow different project leaders to use different fields for the same purpose, right? You should think as generic as possible when creating new fields, starting with names, descriptions, types, and so on. Same is true for statuses and versions. These are highly in demand for reporting purposes, and standards should apply here as well. Selecting the proper field type is very important. Don't use strings to contain dates, for example, because you won't be able to report this data. You will have to parse different dates, formats, and styles. Also, avoid using free text types because, again, it's usually not really reportable and many times can be replaced with some select list with relevant generic options. Many times, users want almost similar reports, only slightly different. Finding a way to centralize generic reports in some kind of a master deck and distributing them upon request or need will save you the time and also your users in trying to do this on their own. Now, if you have a great need in reporting, consider adding a BI specialist to help you with this task. Having a proper business system analyst is crucial to delivering value beyond the day-to-day activities in Jira. Adding a business component into your reports will enable the higher-level management to better measure the business and benefit from the real-time data we have in Jira. Okay, let's talk about backward compatibility. Backward compatibility is not just about upgrades. Any change, whether it's something large like an update of Jira or one of the apps, or something relatively small like a change of a custom field, should be compatible with the whole system. It's like a huge puzzle with hundreds of pieces. Every piece counts and matters. Whenever you're considering a new app, you should make sure it's compatible with all existing apps you already have in your system. For example, apps that add new custom field type or an alternative way to store your data should be compatible with your reporting solutions. And usually it's not the case. If you're only using apps for visualization opportunities, you're in the clear, at least report-wise. Whenever upgrading, you should read all release notes, starting from the version you're now at and up to the planned version you plan to upgrade to. Like they say, the devil is in the details, so read carefully and don't skip on versions. In addition, I encourage you to consult with the app support team and ask leading questions in order to be able to better plan your upgrade. You can also check the existing app compatibility to a specific Jira version using the built-in Jira Update Check option. The results can shed some light on the upgrade process and the required effort. To hear more about upgrade, join Jennifer Van Leeuwen on her talk about planning your next Jira Server upgrade that takes place right after me. Okay, now it goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Whenever changing anything, an upgrade or just a change of a custom field, always do it first on a testing environment. Your testing server should be as close to the production as possible, have all customizations and apps installed with the same versions. I would recommend preparing a procedure of how to clone your production to test and run it periodically. Also, you can utilize containers like Docker and make your life even easier for that. That way, you won't be tempted to do it straight on the production. Okay. System scaling is a major factor when it comes to customizations. A solution that worked perfectly at the beginning when only several teams were using Jira might no longer be sufficient when Jira becomes mission critical at your company. Now, more issues or users does not necessarily mean more problems, just more work being planned, tracked, and completed with the help of Jira. What really makes a difference here is the number and type of customizations. Remember, you should always aim for simplicity to be able to scale. For example, too many global custom fields can lead to scaling challenges and affect indexing performance. You should revisit the list, delete unnecessary fields, try to merge fields of the same meaning and use, and limit the context to specific projects and types when possible. Same goes for workflows and all other schemes. As I said earlier, Cleaner for Jira app and Custom Fields Optimizer can help you with this task. But remember, test and validate first on lower environments. As Albert Einstein said, everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. Eventually, your company's growth may lead you to consider a transition to data center, which is a separate challenge in itself. Now, there are many articles online describing the differences between server and data center solutions, and will help you deciding whether data center is a good fit for your company. What I want to emphasize here is the customization concern. All customizations should be revised and made sure they are compatible with data center. For example, in Jira Data Center, you have your index on several nodes, right? We know that. If you have some customizations that are changing the index on the background, like scripted listeners, for example, each node needs to be aware of it in the same way. You should make sure your code is adjusted to support data center. Okay, as trivial as it sounds, I would recommend managing your Jira activities as another Jira project in Jira itself. Create epics for major features, break them down to stories and tasks, set estimations, and schedule according to priorities. You are the Jira administrators, so use this advantage and help others in the company. If this hasn't convinced you enough, here are more reasons to document. First, you can't, and you really don't need to remember it all. Decide on the format and styles and document as much as possible. If you have Confluence installed, well, it's an obvious choice. Benefit from Jira and Confluence built-in integration. Also, remember to write down the reasoning of your actions, because you might need it down the road. Think of those who will come after you. We have already established that most of you inherited an existing Jira application with all that implies. So, try to do better, and the next admin will be grateful. Now, I have a confession to make here. I like to nerd out on this kind of stuff. I love documenting, explaining in great length what was at stake, how we made the decisions we made, and of course, describing all the bits and bytes of the implementation. And I know not everyone are like that, but I encourage you to strive and document more. You wouldn't believe how many times this helped me to support my arguments and reach the right decisions, well, at least from my point of view. Also, you could benefit from utilizing Service Desk, Jira Service Desk, or any other Service Desk solution for that matter, for the team that manages Jira. Avoid using emails to manage users' requests, because eventually they're simply getting lost in your inbox. Okay, so to sum this up, here is my checklist on how to keep your Jira balanced. Set and enforce standards. Think simple and generic. Start small and expand gradually. Get users' feedback and react fast. Always look for the heart of the requirement. Test backward compatibility on a separate testing server, and document as much as possible. I wish you all the perfect balance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can
Yeah.
you put up the checklist one more time?
Yes.
All right, we have time for a few questions. I'll come around with the mic, whoever wants to ask a question to all of your Jira admin friends.
Here one.
Just curiosity, how many users are in your instance?
We have about 1,000 Jira users right now and 1,300 in Confluence also.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
You said you create sprints on a master board and then everybody uses the same sprints?
Yes.
So all teams participate in all sprints on all their boards? Are there other boards?
Exactly. The sprints are shared. If you assign your issue into any existing sprint in your system, it will display on your board.
Right.
So using the shared sprints gives us the power to manage the timeline, because we decide when the sprint is started and completed. This way, everyone are simply aligned.